Thank you, Rocheston, for inviting me to be part of the conference, and I'm honored to be a keynote speaker here. It's an honor because, first of all, I would say I'm thankful and that the team asked me. I'm nervous. I'm excited at the same time. I'm generally not nervous, but this time I am. I've been a speaker for Rocheston, but this time they asked me to keynote speak. I was totally smitten by it. So thank you so much for the gesture. Now we'll get started. The topics would be for today is DevSecOps and Agility. As you know, this is a topic some of you would be aware about, some of you would not be, and it's more of a student conference. So I would be concentrating more on the topics or the areas which are for the beginners to the medium level people. We would not be going too deep into it, but we would be talking about the aspects of DevSecOps and Agility. Let me just move the slides. I'm not going to talk about myself here. Aditya have told already a lot, but we would be talking about Agile, that what exactly Agile methodology is and why are we even concentrating on that. So when we talk about Agile, Agile is something in very simple terms is fail fast. Now, how do you say fail fast? Something you're working on and you're making sure that if it's not working out, you change the way it works. Earlier, what used to happen when people used to write code, to build an application from the get-go, it used to take 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. That was a normal period. But now, the way we are moving towards, the way we are moving so fast, can we say that agile, or can we say that that kind of a method is relevant? We are seeing so many vulnerabilities and so many new things coming up. So how should we cope up with that? To give you a very, very basic background about it, in the 1990s, software development faced a bit of crisis, which is application development crisis or application delivery lag. Why? Because everyone wanted to move fast, wanted to make sure that we meet the customer demands. Everyone wants everything super fast, especially if there's a new technology which is coming, I want to use it. I want to buy it. I want to use it. I want to have it at home. Similarly, for software development, if there's a revolution that is happening, there's a new language that is coming up, there's a new feature that is coming up, people want to embed that as part of the technology. So for that, is it suitable to say that the development would take place in a year or so? I wouldn't think that. We want to make sure the cycles, the development life cycles are short. And especially for that, people have started creating manifestos. Like Agile Manifesto is actually basically the declaration of values, principles expressed in Agile methodology, which a lot of people have put in efforts. So there are multiple key principles which are there, and it specifically ensure that it uncovers better ways of developing software lifecycle. Now, it might seem boring, but this is actually an interesting thing, wherein the working software we need over the comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. We want all of these things. We want to respond to follow-up paths so easily. And on top of it, what we really practice is iterative developments, which is a way of breaking down things into smaller chunks. Earlier, when it used to take 1 year, it was in one go. And then in the end, security used to come and say, oh, now you have vulnerabilities, go back and fix it. And that's why we became more agile. We started talking about shift left technologies. And especially for students, if you hear in your internship or while you're on job, shift left while you're developing, that simply means embed the security from the very beginning, when even the discussion is happening. Because if you don't embed as part of the discussions, it can be very tricky. Because in the end, if you fix it, it will cost you maybe 10 times, maybe 100 times more. And if a breach happens, who would be responsible for it? And that's why when the development life cycles are truncated, we are making sure that we are adopting to these development cycles, iterative developments, feature code all of these things in a small bits, and we are becoming agile. We are becoming more active. We are becoming more proactive. And we are starting to use these burn down charts, and we are using Trello boards. We are using charts where we can actually talk about these things. And especially my experience with Agile is that we used to meet every day for 15 minutes to give an update. And generally, Scrum meetings are the small meetings which happen every day to check where we are, because the life cycles of the development are very short. So if you don't meet every day, if you don't talk about it, can you be on top of it? There will be backlogs, there will be issues that might be there. To talk about that, these things have come up. And it also gives us a view that how it should look when it develops. Because if there is a roadblock, or if there is something which is not working out, you can change it. And you can change your priority. That's very important. You can have a better visibility into things. And I'll tell you, when we used to go for like the releases after a year or after 6 months, it used to be a huge party. But think of a situation, can we do that now? Can we say that we are 100% secure and we're just going to leave that there? No. We need to start working with the delivering fast. Same ways we need to start working towards delivering the security fast. So what is there? We need to understand how exactly we can have these things on our fingertips, where we understand how to be agile. And especially these things lead to DevOps. Now, what is DevOps? So DevOps traces back to the 2000s, late 2000s and early 2010s, I would say. And it's all about developers and operation team working together rather than working in silos. Earlier, development used to develop the things, give the code to the operations team, they used to test it out, and then it used to go to production, even before security becoming a thing. And even when this used to happen, very less interaction used to happen. Now, with DevOps, it's a combination of cultural philosophies, practices, and even tools that increase the organization's ability to deliver applications and services at faster rate. Think of it as teachers and students, teacher teach, student learn. That's it. But if teacher and student work together on a certain project, certain abilities from the teacher, certain things, certain ideas from students, and combining together a wonderful project. That's what make things beautiful. And that's why mentors, teachers are shaping up our careers. Now, when that happens, speed automatically comes. Velocity always comes in that. And evolving and improving products from a software lifecycle standpoint with a faster pace actually gives organization an edge over other people, other organizations. But it also tells us that we need to be more collaborative, customer centric. So developments generally have always been like, okay, let's talk about customer, what customer wants. But then after a while, it dies down. But DevOps actually target customer requirements with a primary focus of creating quality software. Now, if you're writing a piece of code as part of your project, and it has the right content to look like what you wanted, or what your client wanted, what your teacher wanted, what your professor wanted. But if you add a security flavor to it, wouldn't it be secure? Now, the look and feel what you wanted and security, so that the issues don't come in the production. Nothing is 100% secure, but then you will have more innovation, you will have more freedom to play around with things. And on top of it, you would know, okay, this is what my product is. I can change the strategy, I can build the strategy over it. Another important aspect of this is that why is it important? Because it helps us in understanding that what are our goals. What do we need? We need collaboration, we need communication, we want it to be customer centric. Now, on top of it, it talks about let's work towards DevOps, DevSecOps. Why? Because these agile principles are taking us towards customer satisfaction through early and continuous software delivery. It is actually accommodating the changes that are needed throughout the life cycle or development process. There are frequently delivery of working software. Like I know organizations which are delivering multiple releases in a day. Can you think of it? There's a feature which a client wants and you're delivering in a day. Sometimes not even a day. So collaboration between different teams is very important if you want to do that. Support, trust, and motivation. Now, uh, there's one important thing that I have to say, especially for the student, that if you're working on any software piece for your project, please make sure that you have a mindset that all of these things are going to work together. The agile and DevOps principles, you would follow through it. It will only help you, not just the organization, but you as well. I am actually managing multiple applications of my own. And if I stop checking security, there could be problem with my application as well. But what I have done is that I have put in automation in place. Why? Because I don't want to keep these manual efforts and I tend to forget it. One action missed can be a big problem for anyone. And at the same time, I should have the opportunity to detect these issues, security bugs early on. I'll give you an example of Log4Shell. That vulnerability became very big in December last year. Why? Why that became so big? And everyone was talking about it. If you research on the internet, just write Log4J attack. You would realize that so many organizations have put in details on it. Why? Why they were even talking about it? Because that was open source code that they were using. Some people, some organization didn't even know that Log4Shell actually existing in their environment. Or some people were using third-party components, which those third-party components were impacted, but they were not even aware about it. So these DevSecOps processes also emphasize on a very important topic that we need to have a repository where you can track everything. Because tracking is very, very important. So DevSecOps, everywhere it has to have a proper repository security gates check, wherein going as left as possible. When you're working on those integrated development environments, if some of you have used Visual Studio Code, I used it day in and day out. Earlier, we were using something else. But these actually help us in extending the application adaptability, I would say. Why? Because you can integrate multiple environments with it. You can test multiple things as part of extensions from the Visual Studio Code itself. So this way, vulnerabilities are found as early as possible when it is the easiest. There are many open source tools which are available that you can use. But then there are multiple problems with it as well. What are those? Software delivery speed. Because we thought security is okay. And lack of security focus throughout the app lifecycle. There are siloed security expertise. Like nobody wants to talk. What's going on? If there's a new issue, deal with yourself. I can't help, which is not the case anymore. We want to help out people. We want to get help from the people. And we don't want customer data to be compromised in any way possible. Think of this initializer. You can do demos, you can test it out, you can check it out. But the most important aspect is that we need to understand our own code. At the very core of the applications, we're building the different custom codes. We are making sure that the code that we write is checked, especially if we want to find the security issues. Now, this is something that you see on screen. Let me just zoom in a little bit because I want you to look at the snippet and find security issues. Now, if you look closer at the screen, you would see that there's a controller class. There's a controller, and in that, there's a public class called myController. Then you're trying to get request parameter from the user, which is in the form of a string. And then you're printing certain information back to the user. with the hello and whatever it's asking. Instead of it, if I put a script in it, which is a third party script, or could be a malicious script, how cool that would be. And if it does not validate, or if I want to actually send some malware, send some ransomwares as part of it, how cool that would be. I would enjoy as a malicious actor. But the most important thing is to understand that these issues exist. So this was a cross-site scripting. Now, what is a cross-site scripting? When an application take input from the user, so you are a user, you use your browser, put in an input, application could be XYZ application, take that input, process it, and show you something. So what it is, it becomes cross-site scripting, where third-party script is executing on the server. Server doesn't validate it. And then comes open source. Do we love open source? I totally love open source. Like, I'm a huge fan of open source. And the most important aspect with open source is that 80 to 90% of the code is all open source on the application. And why do I say that? Because when we talk about these open source codes, it actually talks about that, oh, okay, so should we use it or not? And that's where Log4j actually got in, where it's a very popular framework of Apache. And that's why the open source content was being used. But what happened next? Where somebody got into it, started exploiting it, and boom, multi-billion-dollar security architecture went for a toss. Lot of issues, lot of crazy things. But think of a situation where this is a known pattern. This is a big upgrade that was needed for it. And on top of it, this was a known package. But if it's an unknown package where not many people are aware about it or are not using it, what would you do with that? A lot of organizations said, oh, we want to block with WAF. Oh, what do we patch with? Let's have a patch. Let's disable Log4j. Oh, let's have remote code execution code bases. Oh, what should we do? Jindy lookups. But trust me, all of them were behind the regulatory compliance issues. Cloud security control failures. A lot of organizations have gone to cloud in the past few years when they were not even expecting to be going on the cloud. And these remote code executions became a really crazy thing. But there are some crazy examples of that impact. There are malwares which can be deployed. We can take over the complete server. We can data exfiltrate. We can actually play around with the data integrity. Anything can happen. And especially, it's a popular framework and not remote code execution. And in a very nutshell, what is a remote code execution? There's an external code which is getting executed on your server, and your server is entertaining it and helping the attackers out. It could be in the form of zero-day vulnerabilities. Now, what zero-day vulnerabilities are, which have not been detected before, like a very fresh vulnerability. It might have been there for a very long time, but nobody knew about it. This is something which is new about it. So that's called zero-day vulnerability. And they are becoming more and more prone to attacks. They're more available in these days where people want to come up with new things. And let me be honest, injection attacks, when we were kids, they were there. We've grown up, they're here. And now kids are going to grow up, probably they will be there. So what we want to see is something new, not the same attacks. So we could hack an app, or I would say, let's talk a little bit about Iceberg, where the development environment should be such that even if you're sleeping, you know that this is how it is, that this is where I need to fix issues. This is where the problems are. These are the things that I need to fix. And on top of it, the most important aspect that comes into picture is that let's talk about the security communities. Like, why do we even want to know about it? So let me give you a little bit of perspective. So there are security communities you should join, and you should learn these practices from them. And OWASP is one of them. Another important aspect to remember, there are third-party content in your code when you're writing. Or to give you a very simple example, you are You're working on a piece of code, and when you check out that code, you think that there's something which is breaking. Now, when that's breaking, what you do is you just go to internet and start downloading something. Could be third-party dependencies, could be a binary which is not working. Now it's part of your code. Now that binary has an injection issue, cross-scripting issue, or could be any XYZ issue, but you've not upgraded it. Do you think your code would be vulnerable or not? It will be vulnerable. So it's important that you understand where things can go wrong, where issues can be there. So when you keep your code in mind, when you actually start working towards your code, think from a point where in the coming months, if you have to update, would you know everything about it, or you'll have to figure out it? You have to figure that out. Best is keep the right documentation. Keep writing what you have. That's called CMDB, or some people in supply chain technology call SBOM, Software Bill of Materials. So where you maintain a database or list of things that you have as part of your code or your ecosystem. And I'm just trying to be trying to simplify things for you, because you're going to go to the offices, you're going to start working in corporate life. So these terminologies will come very often, where open source content, which is openly available, but that also has certain restrictions associated with it, because there are certain certificates associated with, there are certain licenses associated with it. So before using anything, check the license, what it says, how you can use that open source content. Anything on the internet doesn't mean you can use it. Remember that. You shouldn't say that if it's on the internet, you can use it. If it explicitly says that it's open for any use, then yes or no. And another important aspect is that if you download any vulnerable library, it just does not impact you, but many other people as well. Because application security is becoming challenging day by day. There are new things coming up. And on top of it, we have one foot in open source, other foot in cloud native environments. And we don't want to miss out on those things. We just want to keep going with them. But what if security becomes easier, friendly, and actionable? It also talks about how equipped we are. For you students, remember one thing. There are many organizations who are actually providing you free tool sets, free technology to learn. Embrace that. Use that. We have to pay for all these tools, or our company gives it to us. But for you, there are multiple resources available which you can practice now. You can't just wait for a company to come and say, oh, you should start learning security, you should start learning DevOps or Agile. No. Start now. Research about it. Check what you like. Because it's important to understand those small things, security, which hygiene, which actually gives you visibility. And especially from open source security, understand the best practices. Open source is totally amazing, but let's use it responsibly. Because if we don't use it responsibly, it can be a big problem. Now, why do I say that? Let me just come back to my presentation. Okay. Why do I say that? Because open source, if you don't understand, and especially let me give you this mental exercise. Imagine you've built an app which is in Java or Node or any other ecosystem. Now your mental image for your application is just focused about your code. Like you're just going like this. This is my code. This is my code. I have to check. But think about or dwell with it that you spend hours debugging it, refactoring it, testing it. But suddenly there are things that starts to fall apart, starts to go in different directions. Or this is the reality where your code is just this much, rest is all open source. So that is the code that you wrote to build the application, which is significantly small, but the mental image was totally different. And on top of it, if I have to put it like, all of us rely on the community powered code which someone writes and we start using it. Especially these open source is just giving us so much liberty that we want to keep using it. But how bad is the situation if we don't look at it properly? Equifax breach, where credit reporting company and It actually costed them big money. 143 million records got exposed. This is just the tentative number. There was a report breach, there was a patch which was released in March. May the breach at Equifax started, discovered by Equifax in July. So there was a huge phase which was there. It took them months to realize that there's some problem which has happened. But it is so easy. No. Now, let me talk about a situation where when app is this, open source is this, open source is going to explode. Attackers are going to target the open source ecosystem. But what is the solution? We need to have a culture. We need to have process, technologies. But what is a culture? And especially for you people, students, you need to understand what this culture is all about. Where we care about the people around, especially for developers, working, coding fasting, interesting tech. That's what they want. Security, let's keep it secure. But for operations, we want simple deployment, scalability. Management, they want to deliver a lot of things. Now, the most important aspect comes into picture is that when we talk about these management technologies, it actually gives us a view that, okay, this is fine, but what next? Okay, this is okay, but what's next? These questions keep coming up. And another important aspect that comes into picture is that why do we even want to talk about these JavaScript things? Why do we even want to talk about like these small or medium based things which are there, which are around us? Like, why do you even care about them? Why do you even talk about them? I have to say that these things are the most important aspect. You need to understand that how exactly this can get bigger, how exactly this can get in a different world. Why? Let me show you an important aspect, which is around attacks. So, what are open source attacks? Typo squatting. That's my favorite. Now, why do I say it's my favorite? There's a big example associated with it. So, I am a person, when I start writing, I make a lot of typo mistakes, like literally typo mistakes. And why do I say that? Because I type fast. And there are chances that I mess up, like really mess up. So I try and go slow. But still, things can go wrong. You're trying to install a package and you just miss out one character here and there. And somebody super smart has some malicious content in that inventory, and you download that and start using it. Are you not going to be vulnerable? You're going to be vulnerable. Absolutely. Now, there's a question in the chat box that I can see that DevSecOps, it is too expensive to implement and deploy. Not cheap at all. The commercial tools are very expensive. How can small companies like 1 to 10 employees organizations play this game? Zero budget for secure coding. Trust me, Jason, you can do it. I am a huge fan of open source. I love OWASP. I love multiple companies who offer freemiums or open source tools. Actually, you can do that. Why do I say that? I actually created a presentation called Running an AppSec Pipeline or Running a DevSecOps Program with Open Source Tools. Just look out for these things. You would find a presentation with all the open source tools which are there, especially from OWASP, and you would be able to use it. On top of it, if you feel any issues are there, feel free to reach me on LinkedIn. On my YouTube channel, there's a big series with OWASP Spotlight series, Project Spotlight series. So I've highlighted those projects. Coming back to my presentation. So I actually like the question. So I was like, let me pick it up right now or I'll miss out on it. Now, another important aspect is malicious packages. You and I are friends. You know me for a very long time. I know you know me that I would only put out good content in my repository. But suddenly I sneak in a small malware in that. And you download that package, you start using it, and you're impacted with malware. I have all your information, what I wanted, it's working for me. Similarly, same thing happened with a nice library, event stream, or a package. So with event stream, this package started in use in 2011. Over the period of time, the maintainer got busy, had few priorities. We all have We all deal with those things. A person came back and said, "Oh, I want to help out." Interestingly, you need volunteers when you are taking care of these things. So maintainer said, "Let's take help." One project gone, second gone, third gone. And in one of the small releases, there was a crypto miner which was sneaked in. Anyone who downloaded that package had a crypto miner. Think of a situation, you have a server and it's running crypto miner. How much resources it will be using? You don't want that. I don't want that. So be very cautious about the projects. This one is my favorite. Like, I have so many favorites. So this one is another one where in January this year, one of the maintainers of two packages, Caller and Faker, which is part of the npm.js ecosystem. So what this person did, added a small loop condition to the index.js file of the Caller library, and anyone who downloaded the package and executed the package had that loop condition. And everyone spooked out. It didn't stop there. With the other library or the dependency, Faker, the person actually removed a lot of content. The package started to break, but then a lot of people were using it. Think of these downloads. Huge number. But what about the weekly downloads? That's another big part. Why did that happen? So this person said that I cannot support this project anymore. Why? Because we are not getting any sponsorship. But it is legitimate. Can we blame the person? So many questions comes into picture. But the point is, everyone needs hands. But when you put hands, there's another thing, money factor comes into picture. So they need sponsorships. Or the project would die down. But there is always a way. So it's a debatable thing. What could have been done, what has done, why it was done. It became talk of the town, especially in the development ecosystem. So keep an eye on these vulnerabilities. Start reading about these bugs. Start reading about the security flaws. You might not join security at all. And I totally agree with that. Why do I say that? You don't need to be a security. You don't need to be in security to know these things. You can be a developer, you can be a tester and just be there. But learn the basics and have an understanding of where things can go wrong. So if any times it comes on you, you're ready for it. And nobody should question your code. Nobody should question your work. Oh, then comes supply chain attacks, which affect all the ecosystem. Why? Because these attacks are so crazy. Especially if I talk about these typo squatting attacks, like small changes. Who doesn't do it? I do it all the time. I'm into security. Think of people who don't even know much about security. And these typos can happen like, ooh, we are typing it fast and it's gone. Not just that, containers. A lot of times we download the container images, which are vulnerable from the get-go itself. And then these code attacks, these Git attacks, SolarWinds attack, which was a big one, massive one. So why do we trust it? How do we trust it? Again, say hi to the iceberg, where you concentrate on your app code, where you concentrate on your code, but then open source code, and understand that open source code is amazing. It is important. Why do we need to concentrate on it? Because there are libraries which are impacting big time. But open source, I still love it. But let's just make sure that we have an understanding of it. And then containers, function as a service, static sites, all of these are also equally important. They need the right attention or you will be in trouble. And it doesn't stop there, but it moves to infrastructure as a code. Have you ever thought there's a sale going on? So many people are on it and the site doesn't go down. At least not now. I've not seen multiple sites going down, especially at the sale time. Why? Because they are spinning up new infrastructure on the go. As soon as they need, they start doing that. Think of Kubernetes, think of Helm, think of Terraforms, CloudFormation scripts. All of them are helping. But if they are vulnerable, if they have the cloud misconfiguration, if they have the misconfiguration, it becomes another glitch, it becomes another gap or an issue for an application. And you don't need to say that I'm 100% secure or I'm not secure. Understand what you have, build your own gate around it from a perspective where you understand the whole life cycle, from coding to branching to repos to CI/CD to production, everywhere. You understand it. And then enter into this loop again. And I love this, so I keep coming back to this. And if I have to talk from a typical security perspective, like I'm a person who's working in security for a very long time. So I talk about these things on and on again. So from a security angle, inventory of your open source assets. What tools are you using? Automation. Let's embrace it. Let's have a repository of all the configuration. And for your containers, don't run them as roots. Don't provide unnecessary privileges. Drop the capabilities which are not needed. Only read the root file system. Read only root file systems, not just like you give any access to anyone. No, don't do it. And then infrastructure as a code, role-based access control to security context to network policies, they have to be implemented properly. If that doesn't happen, it's going to be a big trouble. And the most important aspect is that we need to understand the feedback loop, empower each other rather than fighting with each other. Understand where things can go wrong or there will be a trouble. Okay, now before I end the presentation, I would like to answer a question which Bhaskar has asked. The container like Dockers are more secure? That's a question to think. Do you think everything is 100% secure? No. Docker containers are also vulnerable if you have the image which is vulnerable from the get-go. There are malicious repositories. Sometimes we don't even know that they exist, and you download the content from that. So organizations have started to keep their private repos or private place where they host these images, container images, and people pull it from there. The organization pull it from there. There's nothing which is 100% secure. You can never be 100%. If they say, trust me, it's going to be big trouble. Now, I'm going to sneak in some content, which is great, which is like the best practices you should learn. Then there are multiple vulnerabilities that you can check out and stay safe in this journey. Cloud native application security is the key to go because cloud native environments are going to be the big one. Now, I'm going to stop here. We have exactly some 6-7 minutes for questions. So please ask any questions. I tried to be as basic as possible, but if you think there's something which I've not answered, please do post your questions in the chat box, and I would love to take them up now. But if you don't ask me questions, I'll keep chit-chatting. I'm a person who can go on and on for hours on this topic.
Hi, Vandana. I think I'll give you a little about 5 more minutes to chit-chat. I think everyone's enjoying your chit-chat. They won't listen to you speak. So I give you 5 more minutes. You can continue wowing us with very understandable content presented in a simpler way.
Sure. Then I would say that let's talk about open source. Okay. Before open source, there's a question, great presentation, but where can I access those slides? So I'm going to post these slides tomorrow or over the weekend, and you can take it from Rocheston. Rocheston will be able to share those slides. I'll share it with the organizing team. Now, the most important aspect is open source. Like everywhere when you talk about DevSecOps, open source is an important aspect. Why? Because we use it day in and day out. But what is open source? Open source is the content which is available on the internet with limited access or full access. Now, when you start using it, with great power comes great responsibility. So start and have an understanding how to use that. Just don't blindly use any content which is available on the internet. It could be vulnerable too. It might have a ransomware. It might have a vulnerable package. We've seen today that there are bugs which are there. Now, if you want to know more about open source tools, I'll shamelessly plug in OWASP tools because I'm part of an open source community. So I would absolutely nudge that, and everyone should know about it because a lot of times we don't need know that there are tools that exist. There's another question that does OWASP has their code repository like GitHub? Absolutely, they are on GitHub. Let me just pull up OWASP GitHub, where there are all projects which are listed. Even if you want to be of help for any project, you can just go ahead and help out with the project. Let me just put in the GitHub repository of OWASP. If you have a project that you want to be associated with OWASP, you can do that. Another thing is, this is something which I started for students, where I started speaking with the industry veterans and leaders and SMEs of their area. And I ran this series called Breaking into InfoSec, because it's not just for me, but for people around. Breaking into InfoSec is important, where we start understanding, if I'm a developer, how I can break into a security platform. What does it mean to be InfoSec for developers or for students? Application security, network security, what all these things are. So you can actually check out that thing, that link, and you would be able to have an understanding of what it is. If you want to hear from leaders, how they started their journey, what security means to them, then I have also a few other content on that. Now, coming back to the DevSecOps. DevSecOps is something where you want to automate things. If you know the language, trust me, it's amazing. But you don't need to know everything. I don't know everything, and I accept it. If it's part of my journey, I learn it and then move ahead. And there's something new that comes up. So take it as you learn. You don't need to know everything. But if it's part of your work, learn and enjoy. I am learning Python right now, like after a very long time. And this never shy away in asking for questions or asking for help. If you don't know something and there's a SME around you, just drop them a note that this is what I wanted to learn. I know that you're posting certain content, or you're SME of this area. Can I learn something from you? It's very, very important, because if we don't ask questions, the questions will never be answered. So it's important that you ask questions. Very, very important. And yes, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my favorite place. I know it's a social media, but then it's a networking place as well. Make connections, make relationship with people where you can ask them questions for long term, where you have you connect with them very candidly. If I want to connect with someone, I just write a note and send a LinkedIn request to them, because I want to connect. I want to learn from them. I know they are the people or they are the people who are working in certain area which I'm interested in. I would shamelessly send requests to people, but then I would write it with a note, not just a hi. I'll tell you a funny story. There are a lot of people who say just hi to me, and sometimes I don't write back. Sorry, it is not possible. But if you write back to me with a question, I would love to answer that, and I will answer that. It's not just with me, it's with everyone. And we are so engrossed in our work, our life, so much going on around everyone. And we all go to LinkedIn, Twitter, or all of these things for a very brief period. So for every one of you, it is a good thing to use this, but let's make connections, and meaningful connections. So what's your everyday like in the field of information security? So my everyday is very crazy, because I'm associated with a few things and bunch of things. Why? Because I'm part of OWASP, I'm part of BlackHat review board, I'm part of Snyk. So that's my bread and butter, and I love it. I'm associated with InfoSec diversity. I keep giving these sessions because I love them. So my day is like sometimes very, very clumsy, messy, but I try and keep it smooth by keeping my calendar up to date. And I have a notepad which I keep with me always. So at the start of the day, I write down what I have to do. At the end of the day, what I have achieved and what is the backlog that is there, so that I can start working towards it and where I can complete it. Now, another question that has come is, government around the world love to spy on the citizen. Trust me, I'm not the best person to answer that. Trust me. That's somewhere where I would not be able to answer. But I would just say software bugs are there, would be there. You never know. But about the government agencies, I wouldn't be able to comment on that. I'm not the expert in that area. I'm so sorry about that.
Okay. Hi, Vanda. So
I
I think that's our time. There were a couple of interesting questions, and we definitely did enjoy that. So I think the best part was, as you said, you tried to be as in depth as possible while still keeping it simple. So even someone with a very basic or beginner level of cybersecurity was very easily able to follow along the concepts with which you were trying to teach us in your presentation. And as I think someone in the comments said, yes, that was a beautiful presentation. I love the animation and I loved the way you put it together. That was really, really nice. So thank you so much, Vandana. And yes, we would love to have your presentation so we can share it with the audience as well.
absolutely. And see, I know there are shy people in the audience, which is so common. I sometimes shy away in asking questions as well. But you have a way to ask me these questions one to one by putting it on LinkedIn, on Twitter DMs. Feel free to reach out to me.
Okay. So thank you so much, Vandana, for also your willingness to share your knowledge with everybody. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. And as always, we look forward to having you back with us for future
Thank you.
events of the event. Thank you.
Thank you.